Wait, what if the person you built your whole life around starts acting like a stranger in your own home? That's exactly what happened to me, and I didn't even see the signs until it was too late. It started simple. We were the couple everyone envied. Friday nights at the little diner downtown, holding hands across the table like no one else existed. Every morning, coffee together before work, messy kisses, shared playlists, inside jokes that made no sense to anyone but us. I thought that was forever. I really did. At first, nothing seemed off. I mean, who notices when someone texts a little more quietly, or laughs a little too quickly at their phone? He had a demanding job, sure, and I had mine. Sometimes I felt a pang when he'd brush past my messages, but I chalked it up to stress. Everyone's tired sometimes, right? And then the subtle stuff started. Little red flags I convinced myself didn't matter. The way his phone never left his pocket when he showered. The way he'd accidentally forget to mention lunch with coworkers. That sounded way too fun for work. I asked once casually if he was texting a friend, and he smiled and shrugged, like I was overthinking. But the feeling didn't leave, a whisper in the back of my mind that something was off. We spent Saturday afternoons together, but sometimes I'd catch him staring at his phone, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'd nudge him, tease him, but he'd laugh it off. Just a meme, he'd say. But the memes never explained the way my stomach dropped. Every time he got a notification, and still I loved him. I loved him fiercely. The way you love someone even when your brain nags you that maybe, just maybe, there's a reason to doubt. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe in the forever we promised each other in whispers at 2 a.m., under soft yellow lights in our tiny apartment. Then came the night that changed everything. I was cleaning up in the kitchen when his laptop pinged, a chat window opening. A name I didn't recognize. I didn't want to snoop. I really didn't. But curiosity has a way of pulling you into the cracks in a relationship. One message, then another. And suddenly it wasn't memes. It wasn't coworkers. It was intimate. Way too intimate. And all the little red flags, the forgotten lunches, the hidden smiles, they clicked together like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. I froze, the coffee cup slipping from my hand. My heart slammed in my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to leave. I wanted to make it stop, but I couldn't. I stayed there, reading the betrayal unfold in plain text. Words meant for someone else's eyes. Words that weren't for me. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't the person I thought he was. The man who whispered forever to me at 2 a.m. wasn't the man holding my hand during brunch. He had been somewhere else all along, and I hadn't noticed because I wanted to believe too badly. I went to bed that night without saying a word. He curled up next to me, like nothing had changed, and I stared at the ceiling, counting every breath, every moment we shared that was now tainted. Trust isn't just broken, it's stolen. Quietly, without alarms or sirens, and it leaves you wide awake in the dark. The next morning, I left early, pretended I had work, but really, I was just trying to think, how did it get to this? How do you go from holding someone's hand in the rain to realizing their heart was somewhere else the whole time? I didn't know if I wanted answers, or if I just wanted the pain to stop. And that's when I realized maybe love isn't always enough. Maybe wanting to believe in someone doesn't make them deserving of it. Maybe sometimes you have to face a truth so heavy that you can barely breathe, just to start moving forward. I didn't confront him that day. I didn't scream or storm out. I just left, carrying the weight of a love that was supposed to last, knowing nothing would ever feel the same. I spent the next few days in a kind of daze. Walking through the apartment felt like stepping into someone else's life. His cologne lingered in the hallway, his toothbrush in the bathroom, the little notes he'd left in the fridge, everywhere. Reminders that this was our home. Except it wasn't ours anymore, not really. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. Maybe it was just a mistake, a fluke, but the messages haunted me. Each word replayed in my mind like a broken record. The laughter, the sweet nicknames he used. It wasn't meant for me. And the worst part? I remembered every single time. I ignored those tiny red flags because I wanted to believe in him. I started noticing other things I'd buried. The way he'd subtly change his schedule, always too busy for small plans. The sudden obsession with his phone. The excuses that never really added up. I realized I had been living with someone who was there, in body but absent in everything else that mattered. Then came the moment I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. I picked up his laptop while he was in the shower. I know it's not something I'm proud of, but at that point, the trust was already gone. And there it was, clearer than daylight. A series of late-night meetings that were never meetings, dinner plans that didn't exist, flirtatious messages that were crossed with intimate pictures. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like in the movies where someone storms in yelling. It was quiet, almost sterile. Just text after text, proof that the life I thought we were building together was In some ways, a lie. I sat on the couch for what felt like hours, my body trembling, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? Months, weeks? And what about all the moments I had shared? Thinking they were special, thinking they meant something? Did he ever really feel anything for me? When he finally came out of the shower, I didn't say a word. I just closed the laptop slowly, turned to face him, and stared. And in that silence, he knew. He didn't need to ask. There was no denial, no excuses. Just a heavy, almost casual acknowledgement in his eyes that the truth was finally out. I felt hollow. Betrayal isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers in the spaces between your heartbeat, in the pauses of conversation, in the empty room beside you. And I felt it, bone deep, like someone had ripped a part of me out and left me to collect the pieces. I went for a walk that night. The streets were quiet, snow falling softly, and I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. Love isn't supposed to hurt like this. Love isn't supposed to feel like betrayal waiting to happen. And yet here I was, aching for someone who had already chosen someone else. When I got back, he was on the couch, pretending to watch TV. I sat across from him, letting the silence fill the apartment. I didn't need to speak. Words wouldn't fix this. I understood finally that some breaks aren't loud. Some breaks are quiet, and they leave scars you carry long after the person has gone. And that night, I made a decision. I couldn't stay in a life where trust was a memory. I couldn't pretend that things would magically go back to the way they were. Not when he had already chosen a different path. I didn't know how I would leave, or when, or what would come next, but I knew I couldn't stay. The days after that felt like walking through fog. I went through the motions, work, errands, friends, but everything had this dull gray weight over it. Even our favorite coffee shop, the one where we used to laugh until our cheeks hurt, felt empty. Every corner, every table reminded me of him, and it made the ache in my chest worse. He didn't apologize. He didn't try to explain. He just acted like life was normal, like nothing had changed. And maybe that was worse than anything else. It's one thing to hurt someone by accident. It's another to break them while pretending the world is fine. I started sleeping in the guest room. I told myself it was temporary, that I needed space to think, but really, it was to avoid the intimacy that had turned into betrayal. Curling up under the blankets, hearing him moving around the apartment, pretending to care. It felt like living with a ghost of someone I used to love. I remember the first night I almost cried in public, sitting at a diner booth, my coffee gone cold, my hands trembling, and the realization hit me like a punch. This is grief. It's not just the loss of him. It's the loss of what I thought we had, the life we planned, the future I believed in. All of it vanished quietly while I was sleeping next to a stranger. And yet, there were moments that made me question myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I should forgive. Maybe love meant surviving this. But then I'd catch his glance at his phone, or the way he smiled at a message I couldn't see, and the truth clawed its way back. Trust doesn't rebuild itself overnight. Not when it's been broken in this way. One evening I packed a bag, not for dramatic effect, not to confront him, just quietly, so he wouldn't notice until I was gone. I looked around our apartment, at all the little things we collected together, and felt tears sting my eyes. Every picture, every souvenir, every shared meal, it all meant something once, and now it felt like sand slipping through my fingers. Before I left, I wrote a note, short, simple, honest, not angry, not blaming, just the truth. I loved you. I still do, but I can't stay where I'm not trusted. I left it on the counter, folded neatly, like a silent goodbye that didn't need shouting. Walking out that night, locking the door behind me, I felt the strangest mix of relief and heartbreak. Relief that I was choosing myself, and heartbreak that I was leaving behind someone I had loved with everything I had. It wasn't a dramatic exit. No yelling, no slamming doors, no revenge. Just quiet. And somehow that made it hurt more. The quiet forced me to face the reality that love doesn't always protect you. Sometimes, it's the thing that teaches you the hardest lessons about people, and about yourself. I spent the first few nights at a friend's apartment. Alone, I let the tears come when they wanted. Let the anger simmer when it needed. And let the silence remind me that I was still here. I was still me, even if my heart felt fractured. And slowly I started to realize something important. Betrayal changes you, yes, but it doesn't have to define you. You can carry the scars, learn from them, and still move forward. You can love again. You can trust again. But first, you have to survive the quiet aftermath. The nights where the pain is so sharp it feels like a living thing. Weeks passed, and life slowly started to feel different. Not better yet, not healed, but different. I moved into a small apartment of my own. No shared keys, no lingering cologne, no quiet betrayals hidden behind smiles. Just me, my things, and the space to breathe without second-guessing every little action. The first few mornings were the hardest. Waking up alone without him there felt like a punch to the chest, but there was also a strange relief in it. No one else's needs, secrets, or lies were cluttering my day. For the first time in months, I could think, really think, without my mind circling back to him. Friends became lifelines. Coffee dates, late-night walks, even a few long, messy phone calls where I cried into the receiver while someone else held space for me. It reminded me that love isn't just romantic, it's human. Connection exists even when one chapter ends. I started noticing the subtle signs of myself coming back. Laughing at a stupid joke on TV without feeling guilty. Cooking a meal just for me. Dancing in my kitchen alone to songs I hadn't played in years. Little things, but they were proof that I still existed beyond the pain he left behind. But the memories didn't disappear. Sometimes, out of nowhere, I'd remember the warmth of his hand in mine, the soft way he said my name, the comfort of thinking he would always be there. And every time the ache hit again. That's what betrayal does. It leaves the good tangled with the bad, so you can't just erase the love you felt. I tried to understand it, tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was unhappy. Maybe he was selfish. Maybe he lost himself and didn't know how to be honest. None of it made the hurt disappear, but it helped me stop asking, why me? And start asking, why stay? I began journaling. Not for anyone else, not even to figure him out, but to figure me out. Writing down the anger, the sadness, the small flashes of relief, even the fear of being heard again. Each page was like shaking dust out of my lungs. Slowly, I felt lighter, even if just a little. Then came the quiet moments of reflection that hit hardest, when I realized how much of myself I had given away. How many compromises, how many doubts, how many quiet nights pretending everything was fine while my heart was screaming. And I understood finally that leaving wasn't just about betrayal. It was about reclaiming myself. One night, I stood on my balcony, city lights stretching out below me, and breathed. The ache was still there, a dull hum in my chest. But for the first time, it didn't define me. I had survived. I was still me. I had loved. I had lost, and somehow I had endured. I knew healing wouldn't be linear. There would be days when I'd miss him, when I'd question myself, when the loneliness pressed too close. But I also knew I had chosen myself. I had set boundaries, honored my worth, and stepped into a life where trust and honesty weren't optional, they were necessary. And maybe that was the lesson. Sometimes the people we love teach us the hardest truths, not about them, but about us, about what we deserve, about the courage it takes to leave, even when it hurts more than staying ever could. A few months in, life felt steadier. Not perfect, not untouched by the past, but steady. I had a routine, my own space, and small moments of joy that weren't tied to him. Yet sometimes his shadow lingered, on social media, in memories, in the echo of a song we used to play. One evening, out of a mix of curiosity and unresolved feelings, I agreed to meet him. Not to reconcile, not to argue, but to finally speak the truths that had gone unsaid. I wanted to look him in the eye and see the man I loved, and the man I lost in the same moment. We met at a quiet cafe, one we had never gone to together. He looked different somehow, less confident, maybe weighed down by his choices. I didn't let myself soften. I ordered my coffee, straight and strong, because I needed to feel grounded in myself, not in the past. He started talking first, apologizing in that careful, rehearsed way that didn't quite reach his eyes. I listened, letting it wash over me without reacting. Every word was familiar yet hollow, proof that some people can say sorry without understanding the weight of what they've done. Then I spoke. I told him about the nights I spent awake, about the small betrayals that became mountains in my chest. I told him about the trust that had been broken, the love that was real but now complicated, the pieces of me he had held and then ignored. I didn't yell. I didn't cry in front of him. I just told the truth quietly, fiercely, with the steadiness of someone reclaiming herself. And when I finished, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just a calm acceptance that I had said what needed to be said. And now the rest was no longer mine to carry. He nodded, quietly. And for the first time, I saw the full distance between us. We weren't just apart physically. We were apart in every way that mattered. Walking home that night, the city lights felt warmer, softer. The ache in my chest hadn't vanished, but it had lost its sharp edge. I realized closure isn't always about confrontation or revenge. Sometimes it's about claiming your story, speaking your truth, and walking away with your dignity intact. In the following weeks, I found myself laughing again at small, ordinary things. Friends noticed it first, the way I smiled without hesitation, the way my shoulders carried less weight. I felt proud of myself, not because I had survived betrayal, but because I had chosen to honor myself through it. I didn't look back, not really. I let the memories exist without letting them define me. I let myself grieve the love that was, and slowly, I let myself hope for the love that could be. Honest, mutual, real. And somewhere deep down, I understood the hardest truth of all. Leaving isn't weakness. Staying through lies isn't strength. True courage is facing the pain, learning from it, and walking into a life that respects the person you've become. Months later, I found myself standing in a park we used to visit, the same bench where we once laughed until our sides hurt. It was empty now, just me and the winter sunlight reflecting off the trees. I sat down and let the memories come, not to relive them, but to honor them. I thought about the love we shared, the warmth, the laughter, the small, perfect moments that had nothing to do with betrayal. And I thought about the person I had become because of it. Stronger, quieter, wiser. I didn't feel the need for revenge. I didn't feel anger anymore, only a bittersweet recognition that some people are meant to teach you lessons you never wanted to learn. I realized love isn't always about staying together. Sometimes love is letting go. Sometimes love is choosing yourself over someone else's lies. And sometimes love is forgiving. Not for them, but for your own peace. As I stood to leave, I glanced back at the empty bench one last time, and I asked myself a question I still don't have an answer for. If someone you loved betrayed you, but later begged for a second chance, would you take it?